Hi, my name is Ben. I run the Rising Artists Foundation with Nerea, who's over here. We are a 501c3 nonprofit grant and resource organization for young musicians. And for 6 weeks, we are here for a program called Fourth River. So yeah, we have the informational sessions. This is number 2 out of 6, so we're really thankful for everyone coming out. And first we should give a quick shout out to sponsors who help us put this on. So we've got the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust, the Mac Miller Fund, Citizens Bank, Ableton, Resident Advisor, and the Paul R. Judy Grant. And I think that's it. But yes, so thank you for them for helping us get this all together, and the Wood Street Galleries obviously for hosting this. I'd like to hand it over to the panelists to introduce themselves.
Hi there. My name is Joyce Lim. I am the founder of an independent boutique record label called 1432R. I founded in February of 2014. And so over the past, I guess, a little bit more than 10 years, I've put out 23 releases with almost 20 artists, primarily on vinyl. I specialize in experimental electronic music. First made a name for pioneering a new genre of music called Ethiopiawi, but since then I've gone on to publish drum and bass, techno, house, club, and some weirdo experimental stuff in between. I also run a party in DC called Dance Club. I also am one of the organizers of Zap Outdoors, a punk and electronic music festival that happens Labor Day weekend in West Virginia. Thank you for having me.
Hello, I'm Melanie. I'm the U.S. General Manager for a British-based label called Rough Trade Records. It was started as a then became full, and they're two separate things. Cutting out. Before that, I was a project manager for Beggars Group, where I ran album campaigns. Before that, I was a project manager for Secretly Label Group, where I ran album campaigns. And before that, I managed a record store in Seattle for 10 years. So I kind of looked at music from every angle at this point.
Cool. Thank you. So just to kind of give everybody a heads up about sort of where we're gonna go with this talk, we're gonna cover some things about like what are masters. We're gonna talk about the process of before you sign to a label, kind of that, like how to sign to a label, why, what labels have to offer, and then we want to leave some time at the end for some questions. So we'll probably talk for about 45 minutes and then go into a Q&A session at the end. So, and then we're also going to try to leave everyone with some very tangible kind of takeaways. So that's kind of where we're going to go. So I guess to just kick things off, let's just start by defining some core terms. So last week, the session was about publishing. This week, we want to talk about masters. So do one of you two want to just sort of give a brief description of what masters are and what we're monetizing here on the label side?
Can you do? So basically there's two halves to owning music, right? So there's writing the song, composing the song written down on a piece of paper, the composition of it. And then there's when you take that song and you go and record it and make an original audio recording of it. That's the master. And the publishing is the paper, basically. So a lot of times artists, if you're working independently, you own the recording, you own the composition as well. If you're working with a partner, a lot of times the person or the business who has invested in recording the song and distributing the song, a lot of times owns the master and you still own the publishing. Then there's many variations on that, I guess. That's the usual.
I think I'm just guessing that there's a lot of people just getting into production here from like a practical standpoint. You can think about it as like the mixing part of the process is where you are adjusting the individual levels where everything's sitting in the EQ and the old sound frequency. Then you send that. I would recommend not doing the mastering yourself. It's an entirely different skill set to get mastered, where a mastering engineer is going to try and make it so that your song sounds as consistent as possible, whether you're listening to it in computer speakers or whether you're listening to it in a club with a hi-fi sound system. They're two different processes, but that's kind of how I would apply it in your actual workflow.
So some other terms that we're going to be talking about here, as we talk about labels, we're also going to talk about distributors. All of this side of things is monetizing the master side of the royalties, right? So I guess briefly, let's talk about labels versus distro or distributors. And both of you who work at labels, you want to talk about your dynamic with what's the difference between what a label does versus a distributor?
So, if you are considering starting a label, um, you do not want 500 records to sit in your apartment. You need someone to push them. A distributor will either press and distribute those records for you, which is kind of like what you really want. Or you can have someone basically send them to different record stores. Also, like if you are willing to put the relationships and build those in, record stores will buy from you directly. It's a little bit more work, but it is more money. Just over it depends on just how you want to spend your time. 1432R is pressed and distributed by Rub-a-Dub in Glasgow, Scotland. I've also worked with Honest John's in London, and I've worked with PPU in Washington, D.C. They're all different and they do things differently, and they have their own um, uh, audiences too, because they've taken the time to build trust, which is really important when you are in publishing or being any sort of artist, for people to trust the level of excellence that you're committing to. And so that's really the difference. I will say that, like, I think all labels are publishers, and all labels can distribute their own, but there are people that just distribute, which is taking that what you're making, what the label is making, and helping push it to Japan or Europe or Latin America, where markets that you might not be able to build in. So it is really important.
How about on the digital side?
Digital side, I use Seed.
Yeah, so basically your distributor is your fulfillment, they're the ones that put the products on the shelves or get the audio put up on the digital platforms for you. And they are kind of the easy one-stop, so you don't have to do it yourself individually. You can go around to every record store and sell your wares. You can go onto you could have an account on every DSP and upload individually all your music, but you're not going to have time to do that most of the time, so you're going to want a distributor to do it for you. So they will take care of all the fulfillment and the stocking and the storing of the physical product and everything, so that you don't have to worry about that. And then the label's job is to make, market, and sell that product so that these distributors, or so that customers buy it, so then they run out of it, so then the distributors can replenish, so.
And one more term there that was in that you just said is DSP, digital service provider. So that's like Spotify and Apple Music and things like that. Bandcamp counts as one. So yeah. So, okay, I feel like those are we'll probably we'll probably encounter some more terms to define as we go, but I feel like those are kind of the core ones that are going to be coming up. So the questions that had been submitted previously generally fell into two main categories. how to sign to a label and why to sign to a label. So should we start with why and then go into how? Let's do that. So, okay, it's 2025. We have the internet. We why would both of you say that an artist should or should not sign with a label? And I guess later we can talk about maybe starting their own label. But let's first. That's I guess the core question of it.
Okay, so my feeling on it is why you should sign for a label. It depends if you want to, how much help do you want, basically, is my thing. You can do, the great thing about right now is you can do everything yourself if you want to. You can be in charge of all of it. You can own all of it. You can hire individually all these places to help you with what you're going to do. You can pay for a distributor. You can pay for a publicist. You can, have all of these different pockets that you work with, right? All of that is a ton of work and a ton of time. And if you're dedicated and you want to do it all, absolutely do it all. It is also a lot of money a lot of the time, right? So if you would like to spend most of your time focusing on being an artist, making music, playing shows, a lot of times you want to bring in someone to help you. And so labels, I think people should really look at them as like business partners, right? And support, um, music support, like staff, basically. So you bring someone on, they invest in your business, your own independent contractor business. They can help front money, invest money into what you're working on. They can provide labor, like actual people on the ground to help work on all of your stuff. They usually have publicists. They have people that service your music to radio. They have people that service your music to all the digital streaming platforms, try to get you on playlists and things like that. There's a lot of aspects to record labels and the different departments. They can help you with music videos. They can help you with so many different things in one company, rather than you like individually hiring out people to do all these things for you. So that's basically how I look at it, is like, if you would like a business partner, if you would like more help, if you would like more people working on your music with you, then that is a good reason to partner up with somebody.
All solid advice. One thing, so I think that before you ask yourself whether you want to sign to a label or how to do that, I'd like to just kind of maybe talk a little bit about what an artist is and what art means. And if you look back in art history, right, if we're talking about like all the way to like cave art, to Ottoman art, to art in the Renaissance, we talk about, the Dutch masters, if we talk about Dadaism, Surrealism, Futurism, all of this stuff, I think one common thread is that the artists that have last were not in it for simple self-expression. There was a reason, there was a dedication to something, an idea. In that sense, and I don't really have the answer, but like I think that we should be thinking about like, our artists scientists? Are we visionaries? Do we create science fiction? Um, are we activists? Are we imagining, different futures that are specific? What are we, healers? There's not really like an answer to it besides the one that you can decide for yourself. It's really, really important that you figure out what you want to say that goes beyond your own ego. Otherwise, your art will not last because it's just not that interesting. It's just not that interesting. So the self-expression, okay, great. But like, any kid with the crayon can do that. As artists, we have this unique ability to build symbols. Symbols are stronger than words. Symbols are stronger than one track. symbols can actually change the way that people perceive the world and move about spaces. It can reimagine what can be possible. There is a lot of atrocities going on right now, not just in our country, but all over the world. I know that, like, obviously there is this thing happening in Gaza, but there's 5 to 7 different genocides happening right now, depending on how you define that. Um, yes, over almost 1 million people have been killed or displaced in this thing with Palestine, but 6 to 7 million people have been displaced in the Congo. A countless number of people of Uyghurs have been displaced in China. The Rohingya Muslim ethnic minority in Myanmar has also been displaced and killed. There's like a lot of evil going on. It's my belief that part of our job is to balance that stuff. I don't really know how to, and well, actually, I also think that the anti-transgender legislation and efforts in this country could also be considered genocidal efforts. And I don't really know how to stop everything. I'm sure that a lot of you have also felt that kind of helplessness recently. I think it's a lot easier for me to control on my community, control my output, and try to make things as beautiful as possible and try to emphasize the good. And there's so much good, even in this room, that we can focus on. Before you think about how do I get signed, I think it's really important that we think about, like, what do I want to say? What do I want to do to create a space that is that helps create courage, that helps I mean, like, there's a lot of people that are scared of us. That's why arts funding is under attack, because we have the courage to be authentic. The more that you are looking outward for, like, how am I getting Instagram followers? How am I going to get on this playlist or that playlist? You lose your authenticity. So, like, trying to figure out who you are and how you can contribute to the conversation, I think, is a lot more important than figuring out what deal is going to help you. With that being said, once you have that figured out, please contribute. Like, the really, really practical advice that Melanie just suggested is, like, totally, totally solid. But that's kind of how I wanted to sort of answer that.
Yeah, and I think that like that is the kind of core question of like who do you want around you on this journey, right? Um, and I think that like one reason why I was so excited to have the two of you here is because I feel like the labels that you both operate as part of are pretty different in scope and work with different types of artists. So, and that really reflects like, okay, maybe certain artists, maybe it's right to go with these different labels and different times of their career, different what they're trying to do, who they have around them currently. So I guess, do you want to talk about like, uh, say, we have all these artists out here who all have a variety of motivations and goals and things like that. What, I guess, kind of carrying that idea forward, like, what advice do you give in terms of the people and the sort of path forward that they can take once they have an understanding of where they want to go?
So, first of all, there's like a lot of ways to skin a cat here. Um, and one thing I will say is whatever advice that I have here, you don't have to take it. You can listen and like see what rings true to you, but I would really encourage y'all to like forge your own path. I will explain a little bit about how I do things at 1432R. I don't work with people I don't know because it's really important to me that we are aligned on views, aligned on worldview, aligned on how we treat other people. I ask for my artists to sign a code of conduct that requires them to think about the environment, that asks them to respect music journalists, even though the state of music journalism is I know it's not great. It's not great, and it's not actually the journalists, it's the structure, right? Like, our media is reliant on exploitation. It's reliant on advertising, so you're not going to get radical critique. They need us more than we need them. Don't ever forget that. I haven't actually accepted an interview request in the past 3 years because I'm like, this isn't necessarily what I need to say. As far as like my label goes, when I'm talking about like um the kind of world we can live in and what we can do, I don't mean like posting a Instagram story about like, oh, like I'm against genocide. Like, okay, great. That's not actually helping Palestinians, believe it or not. But when you look at my label, you don't have to question what I'm about. I have Black artists. I have artists from developing countries. I have lesbian women. I have people who are old and established. I have people who have debuted and who are new. I have people that work just in hardware and just in the box. You don't have to question my politics because I walk it. You want to be able to stuff your politics and stuff your activism into every single symbol that you create because that is the power that we have. And if you don't know how to do that, then there's other ways to contribute to this environment. But you want to be, when we're talking about the people that we want to work with, you want to be aligned in vision because we can't be micromanaging each other. If we're all just aligned on like what we want to do, it's a lot easier to just trust, have each other's back. And so I don't work with people that I don't know, that I don't see perform, that I don't understand their process, that I understand what they want to do. This does mean that it is a little bit of relationship building, but I think it's just like great for liability personally. So, like, when something doesn't feel right. Everybody here has that. Like, listen to that. The more you ignore your intuition, the quieter it's going to get, the more confusing it's going to get. And you might make some mistakes here and there, but do it. Don't be afraid to be bad at stuff. Do it, take the chance, learn from people when it feels like they're ringing true to you, but like do it your way and contribute in your way and find other people that are aligned with the way that you are contributing is, I think, the as far as a liability standpoint, the safest way you can move about this because there's just a lot of sharks. There is evil in the music industry 100%. There's exploitation. It's built on it. It's built on appropriation 100%. So it's just really, I mean, you have to be just so psychotic about who you work with. It's not Instagram followers. It's not Spotify plays. It's like here.
Melanie, do you find that working at a like big, a label with a lot of infrastructure and a lot of people, do you struggle with sometimes with like alignment with the artist's vision? And are there certain kinds of artists that thrive more in a big label versus certain kinds of artists where you think, oh, maybe this isn't the right match?
I live in this sweet spot where I work for this very, boutique independent label, but we are attached to a bigger machine, I guess, in the background. Beggars Group, Rough Trade is part of Beggars Group. Beggars Group has 4 labels underneath it. And Beggars is like what you would consider like label services support staff. So we have our own label staff, but then we have this whole team called Beggars Group that also works on all of our releases. So because we're all part of this bigger group together, we, like maybe have access to these bigger partners and these more corporate things, but we are ourselves not corporate. So it's really like picking and choosing how much you want to engage with something, right? And so I think the nice compromise with me is we don't have to like force our artists to do anything. Obviously, we want to work with people that want to be successful. Record labels are still a business. If we don't make money, we can't put out more albums and sign more artists and do more fun things. But we let everybody decide, right? So if you're the kind of artist you don't like to do press, you don't have to do a lot of press. You don't care about being on the radio and doing like cheesy radio promotion stuff, you don't have to do that. I've had artists that refuse to have social media accounts. That's fine too. As long as your expectations are reasonable as to like, I'm definitely not going to get played on the radio if I don't play this radio game, and you're fine with that, that's great. So let's focus on the things you want to do and how you want to do them and how we work around these things that you want to avoid. If you don't have social media, how do we get people to look at your art And then if they want to share it online, they can, but you don't have to do it. Like just everyone kind of, we map these like kind of custom campaigns for people based on your personalities. But how we get there is what you were saying earlier about before you sign to a label and you think about who you are and what you want to say, those are things we love for you to already know when you get there, like your likes and dislikes, your comfort levels with different things. Some things you learn as you go. Obviously, you don't know it all offhand, like what you're going to be willing or not willing to participate in. But if you do have this sense of like, I know who I am, I know what I want to say, I know how much of myself I want to share with the world, I think those are all like crucial, and they actually help us make better campaigns. The more of yourself you will put into promoting an album, the more creativity we get to have, because we know exactly who you are and what you're into, and we know what you don't like. But when people come to you and you say, okay, how do you want to do this? And they go, I don't know, however, it's like almost like the amount of choices you have almost becomes like nothing. You can't come up with any good ideas off of like, I don't know. But if you're like, I really want to do something where I like only do like weird pop-up shows and pizza, restaurants or whatever, like great, I can totally figure something out with that. So I think yeah, just like the thing that's going to make your music and your art really stand out is you and everything about you and your thoughts and your feelings and your views on the world. Because like she was saying, like everybody makes art, everybody makes music, but the thing that makes it different is you. There's only one you. So like push yourself into all of it as much as you can that you're comfortable with, I would say.
And on the creative side, how involved is 1432R and Rough Trade in shaping shaping the music and also the sort of visual language and of a record?
Personally, I really avoid giving my producers advice. Honestly, I avoid giving most people advice. I was just telling Ben, like, I wouldn't even be here unless Aaron asked me because I would do anything for those guys. But I don't like telling people how to do stuff because I just think like there is a lot of benefit to the way that people do it. With that being said, sometimes it's just like nudges, little sorts of. I had an artist recently who was like about to throw away an entire EP and all the songs were wrong. And I was just like, why don't we just start this song from 24 seconds in? Let's just do that. And it like changed his entire idea about it. So sometimes there's like low hanging fruit. But I do all the album art myself, and, like, hearing Melanie talk about how much resources she has is, like, kinda making me jealous a little bit, to be honest, 'cause I do everything myself, and so I'm probably gonna be a lot slower, and things don't always get done at the same time, so, like, for example, I've had, some album art be done, like, first draft, the artist knows what they want, I do it, and then there's other artists where they've made me draw like 500 different variations of lions. Like that's actually happened and it's taken like years and that's okay to me because I don't need to rush. I'm not in a rush. I feel myself as more of a conduit for things and they're just going to get hatched and baked when it's ready. So I really try not to offer unsolicited general advice because it just muddies a lot of stuff. But I do think that some of the greatest managers in history are ones that were artists themselves, and I do think that there's room for that. I think this is just more of a stylistic preference. And so that's another thing about something Melanie mentioned about like how much help do you need? There are some labels that are just straight up going to be able to offer more than you are with me because I don't want to. I want you to do it and figure it out. I want it to be your thing. So I think that's just a stylistic thing though.
Then the plus side for that is, it you'll have more of a machine, right, if you sign with Rough Trade, but it will cost more. So the amount of costs we incur per album are probably higher than an independent standalone label. So that's something to consider too. If you want to start out and be like, I don't know how far in debt I want to be right off the jump, right? Like if you're lucky, all the costs recoup and everyone's happy. Sometimes it doesn't. And you don't see returns from that album until it recoups. It's like a whole other separate conversation. But sometimes starting out with like someone someone who runs a label you respect, that's independent, that you know, I've worked with the labels before where I've had to, you do 5 jobs all at once. It does save you money, and it's still a high quality of work that's coming out. Um, it's just a matter of like, yeah, your comfort level of what kind of company you want to work with, how much money you want, you know, um, invested in. And like, I have no judgment or opinion on like people who want to like go straight to a major label to people who want to stay independent and not, and be their own label, so it's all personal preference.
Okay, so before we jump into the how design, I want to define one more term here. You mentioned recoupment. So one thing that everybody should know is that sometimes when you sign to a label, there's people talk about getting an advance. That is not a paycheck. Like that's a loan.
Not a gift. Yeah.
Not a gift. That's a loan, and you have to recoup or like pay that loan back to the label via the royalties that come in, right? The revenue from the monetization of those masters. So that's one thing that everyone should know. Okay, so
Just like any business, right? Like if you wanted to open a restaurant and you got someone to invest in your restaurant to open it with you, they'll loan you a bunch of money to help you open that restaurant. But that person's going to want to also make money back on their investment. So, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so we talked about like what a label does and what they can offer. So let's talk about like how a independent artist who is interested in signing to a label. What's that process like? How do you form relationships? I mean, Joyce, you said that you don't work with people you don't know. Like, has anyone kind of come into your orbit that you have eventually signed? And then Melanie, like your process is very different, obviously. So we'd love to talk about like for these unsigned artists, what do they do?
Yeah, so absolutely. There are people that have maybe sent me a demo that I then go and check it out. I go and meet them. You Nobody is successful in a vacuum. You have to go and participate. And when someone should get flowers for a good show, go and talk to them, introduce yourself. Find your kindred spirits out there so that you can understand what kind of environment you are willing to work in. So I think that like going out and like actually making an effort to like be in these communities is probably going to be your best bet with this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to say is just participating in the community, the music community, whatever it is for you, whatever your scene is, whoever your friends are that also make art, make music. Just the fact that you're all doing the thing is the thing that people notice, like it doesn't matter. The shows don't have to be perfect. The music you put out doesn't have to be perfect. People like to see someone who's being really just like creative and active and present. And, a lot of the music industry is like you meet people at shows, you meet people at events, you meet people through other artists and friends and musicians. So you have to just be out and doing things all the time. I'm always like, just do stuff. Just go outside and do stuff because it does happen. There's all these like one in a million cases where it's like this label found me because I loaded 2 songs onto SoundCloud and never even played a show. That totally happens. You know, cold emailing record labels and sending them a link to a demo. Every once in a while, one of those works and, you get signed. They usually like email you back, meet up with you, see you play a show, whatever it is. But like those things do happen, but they're the exception and not, that's not normally how it goes. Usually it's like you just keep hearing about this person and you're like, what is the deal with them? Somebody told me about them. Then I saw they were playing this show. Then I saw they're like working with this person that I really like. Like slowly in the same way that you're attracted to someone that you want to be friends with or that you want to date, it's like, I really like this person that like seems to like have their, like their shit together. Like they know who they are, like making cool stuff. Like labels are the same way, they're drawn towards interesting people and interesting music. So if it's out there and it's accessible, like they'll find it and they'll find you a lot of the time. Like I find chasing isn't 100% necessary. If you just like put your head down and you do your thing and you're really happy with what you're doing and you're participating and meeting people and just like being open, I find people usually will come to you at some point.
So, the label thing, like, for me, it's a lot easier to quantify. Like a label, it's like so surreal. It's like hard to like even like imagine like what are we even talking about here, right? If you're trying to get signed for the first time, like what that means. What I would suggest is just try to sell to 1,000 people $10 worth of stuff every year. That's one $10 Bandcamp release, or it's five $2 tracks. A lot of y'all have 1,000 followers on Instagram. It's not really that hard anymore with ads and stuff like that. If you are able to sell 1,000 people $10 worth of stuff, that's $100,000. The labels will come to you. That's their job. They have A&R. You don't even have to do that part. So it's like concentrating on the label and the deal feels backwards. You have to be worried about, is this the best song I've ever heard? Have I just made something that's going to fuck shit up? That is what we should be thinking about right now. It's not the deal. The labels will come and get you. Just start with 1,000 people. It'll be enough, really.
Joyce, we had one question come in that you sort of answered, but I want to like just hone in on it for a second. Say an artist, completely independent artist, really loves a independent local label like yours, right? But that artist, they are fans through the internet. They do not live in DC or wherever that independent label is based. How how then can they reach out, or how can they sort of form that community where it's not geographically possible?
That's a tricky one. What I would say is they should build it in their community. If you don't have anything cool going on, that's a opportunity to be a hometown hero, in my opinion. You don't need me. You need yourself. If you are looking for something across the world and stuff because there's nothing going on where you are already, that is literally an opportunity to me. That is not a deficit. Like, there are, a zillion parties in London. There's a zillion parties in Berlin. Building another party there, like, it's not, in my opinion, that crazy. But if you're like out in the middle of nowhere and you do that for people, like, literally, that is hero's work. You have the ability to create your own geographical sound. That's literally a reason why I started mine. Because I was like, I'm doing it. Just gonna do it my own way. So I would say that if we haven't met and if you do like reach out and that you do love it, like I answer every email that I get. First of all, I listen to every single demo. I'm gonna talk to you. But I would consider it more of an opportunity for yourself to create something that's not there already.
Um, uh, Another question that we got, which I think maybe might be you guys might have different perspectives on, is the question was wondering, should I release with several labels or should I stick with one label for X amount of releases? Uh, I think Beggars probably leans more towards signing multi release deals. I don't know what your approach to that is, but I'd love to hear both your perspectives on that.
Yeah, I think that also depends on how good your relationship is with the people that you're choosing to work with. Ideally, I think our label does like to commit to an artist for at least 2 or 3 records, just because it takes, it's so much work to get going and get started and develop that relationship and build that trust and create those relationships with everyone else on the outside that you are marketing and selling your artists and their music to. And it feels like if you just do one album and you go through all of this and then it's over, and then you start all over again. You'll also have to go to another label, start all over again from scratch, basically re-explain yourself, what your preferences are, what you want to do, what you don't want to do. If you're working with a label and you don't like the way they're doing things, and um their mode of operation just doesn't like vibe with you, absolutely move to another label. If your commitment is done with them, if you want to try to do like one-offs with 2 or 3 different labels and see which one you liked working with the most, I do think there is something to be said with like having a long-standing relationship with people who've known you over many years and know exactly what you're about, and when you're ready to like move in one direction or another. I think it is just helpful. It's just like, having people in your life that you have built up trust with.
Are people really still making like 5-year plans? That sounds really overwhelming to me personally. Like, I'm just trying to get through the day most of the time. So, like, this idea that I'm doing like these multi releases, it's like, it's too much. It's just too much. I am really proud to say that most of my artists have come back and worked with me again, because they know I have their back, because I wouldn't do it if I didn't. I'm also proud to say that a lot of my artists have been picked up by bigger labels pretty much like pretty quickly, and which I support, and that's great, and that's like part of it. Um, and it's like more money for them and more exposure, and that's great. Uh, while I was talking earlier about like being authentic and about how important that is, authenticity is not like an inflexible thing. Like who you are right now in this second, as true to yourself as you can be, like we should also doubt ourselves. We should also be like, like this is something I can work on. I'm not really sure about this, because otherwise you're not going to be able to grow. And it's just weird, you know? So I would say that like I don't personally make any exclusivity clauses. I'm more into just like, let's just try to finish this track right now. I think finishing songs are hard enough, honestly, without thinking about like 2, 3 years and that sort of thing. But I am like, again, a little jealous of the machine that Melanie's working with right now.
But you make a good point though, and that is that there is a lot of flexibility in the kind of deal that you want to do. If you want to do one-offs with a label, do one-offs. If you want to do singles only first and be like, I'll give you 3 singles and see how that works, you can do that. I mean, it's really, you can do these things that, labels do these things called options, which is like, we'd like to work with you for 3 albums, but that just means you give us the option first of putting it out, you know? If we hate the album you make, or you hate us, or we hate each other on that second or third album and no one wants to do it, they'll let you go. It's not there are, I'm sure a million stories about certain labels and certain deals where they won't let you go, and they'll, and that's a horrible situation. But we tried to, like, I feel like the music industry now needs to be more flexible. It has become more flexible as far as like what artists want and what kind of deals they want to have. And if, you want to have a really good relationship with an artist, you try to make the deal that works best for everybody. And hopefully, ideally, you can get that. But yeah,
I also
I've had artists leave us as well for bigger labels.
I also think that part of it, at least for like from the artists I've managed, there's also 2 other factors. Like one is a lot of artists view these as kind of like a thing to align with, sort of like for people who have never heard of them. Oh, if I sign with RNS versus whatever, some other, whatever, any label has its own kind of vibe and its own ecosystem. And I think that an artist can be like, well, I want people to know that I'm kind of like aligned with these values versus those values. And maybe for one release, I'll put it here. One release, I'll put it on my own label, and kind of like make that little web for people to sort of see who they are as an artist across releases. But also from the labels, when my artists have worked with, labels, the labels have, one thing I've heard repeatedly is a lot of, especially from bigger labels, who say, well, we're building up until like, album album number 3, album number 4, that's when kind of like we're in a good groove with this artist, and there's, the artist has developed more, there's more money coming in, they recoup, and so it takes time to build that. But again, I think it just completely depends on the artist and their goals and all that kind of stuff. Um, we're at about 45 minutes, so we should open it up to questions. And I feel like, because there other questions had come in before, but let's address those, now directly from the crowd. So, do we have an extra here? We can use this mic to pass around. So,
Does anyone have a question? Yes. Okay. Close to walk. Great.
Hi. I have like a lot of questions, but I'll try to keep them like brief so I can share the mic. Starting with like the exclusivity clause, like basically my question is like, do you get to choose your record label deals, or are you pretty much like just have to accept what's given to you? Like, is there any negotiation like power there?
Probably just depends on the label, on the type of machine they have. Sometimes it's just a standard deal that they give to all artists. Sometimes it is going to be depending on what you want to do, like the options that Melanie just mentioned. So I think closed mouths don't get fed. If you want to sit and negotiate, nobody should tell you that you can't do it. You might as well ask. There's nothing that you can lose from doing that. With that being said, there are some institutions that are just like, this is just the way that we've been doing it. But you can give them a chance to like explain that to you, even if it's just to even understand the deal more. So like, why is this the way it is? Why is that the way it is? Just so that you get it and get a better expectation of it. I will say also that like, it's really hard to get rich off of making records. A lot of this money comes from shows. A lot of this money comes from like, things like merchandise and going out and like doing other stuff. So like a lot of times the record is like a business card where you're like trying to get booked into this other stuff. And I know that like now it's like short form TikTok content and like that sort of thing. That's also like important. And that's, and different labels will tell you you have to do this and that and the other. But like I will say, if you feel like you would like something in anything, whether it's with your landlord or like, whoever, like you should just ask. There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion.
Yeah, you can always negotiate and they can always say no. But I feel like we send out like a standard deal, and then the two sides go back and forth and tweak and fix things to their preference, and like to get to a point where both people agree. If both people can't agree, then yeah, maybe that, offer goes away, but then maybe that wasn't the right deal for you, right? And then one other thing I would say about that is we have a rule that we never do contracts with people who don't have a lawyer. So if it's a friend that is in law school, if it's someone that, or if you don't have like a lawyer, like someone should be looking at it with you who understands all this stuff. We never want to have our lawyer go in and just force a deal with an artist. Like you should have representation. It's a contract just like any other contract. You want someone to like really like go through it and like represent you for it.
I have like 2 follow-ups to that, and then I promise I'll pass the mic around. Going off of like the lawyer thing, if you, the artist, have had experience like negotiating contracts before, like for other establishments, like you actually have done like red lines and stuff like that, would that be sufficient enough of representation, or do you actually need that other physical body there to represent you?
I mean, I think for us, we would want you to have another person on hand to really make sure that you're happy at the end of the day. We don't want anything to be misunderstood or for people to feel like, they were tricked in any way or anything like that. Like it's the contracts are also very clear. Like we try to be very clear in them, but I think there are certain labels who are like, if you feel confident and experienced enough to handle this contract on your own, by all means. But I think on the management side, you would say,
I will say, a lot of cities, and I would be surprised if Pittsburgh, I'm from DC, but didn't have one. There's a lot of nonprofit lawyer groups that can help you pro bono in DC. The LFA Lawyers for the Arts helps with not just musicians, but photographers and sculptors and that sort of thing. But like, even if you have experience working in a certain type of contract, like music law is its own thing. It's its own beast. And also you want some objectivity. You know, if it's your contract, like that's a lot of like if there's someone else to kind of take an objective look and also give you an idea about like, this is how the way things normally go. Cause I see them so much and I work with so many artists, that kind of insight can be invaluable.
Yeah, like industry standards, they should be aware of that, and they should, like, I think it's absolutely necessary to like, if you don't know any sort of specific music attorneys, you can find them online, reach out. You can DM whoever, ask who their lawyer is, but get a music attorney who knows the different terms, what the industry standards, what they have negotiated. A lot of them have negotiated with all these different labels multiple times a year, so they know what they can get to. Do not try to go with just someone who is a generic lawyer who doesn't have music experience, or if you have redlining experience yourself, still get a music lawyer.
There are people that do it for free though. Really?
And then my last question, for recruitment of the advance, is it possible to like have like, does it have to be music sales only to pay that loan back? Or could it be like if you did like a commercial or a movie or a brand and deal or something that they'll
Absolutely.
pay back?
Yeah, anywhere that we can make the money back using the original recording, your recording, works. So any licensing deal for TV, movies, a commercial. I'm trying to think of where else that revenue comes from. It's mostly outside of selling physical product and the streaming monetization. A lot of people recoup from what they call syncs, which is licensing music to a TV or a commercial or a film.
To be honest, that's where most of the money is. There's also companies that just help with sync licensing, that are definitely worth checking out. Like if uh, I had there's a documentary that used a song that I published in 2015. They hit me up in like 2021. I had just like totally forgotten about this thing and then was able to like call my artist after like, honestly, I hadn't talked to him in like over a year, and it was just really, really awesome to be able to do that with him. But like the sync licensing is gonna be just so much more money than just like selling records, honestly.
I recently had an artist whose first album did fine, but was still a little bit in the red. And they landed one, I think, major commercial, and it wiped out half the debt in one song. So, things like that happen all the time. And it kind of takes the weight off. Another thing that this is the separate conversation about recouping, but I want you guys to know that when a label pours money into your album campaign, spends money, goes into debt, and technically you are in debt with them, right? You will never personally have to pay that money back. No matter what anybody says, they're not going to come for you. They're not going to dock your paychecks. They're not going to send collection agencies after you. It just means you won't see money from the sale of that record until it's recouped. So I know a lot of people they see that statement, they stress out. They're like, I owe the record company $100,000 or whatever it is. You don't actually owe them anything. Your record owes them, right? So I want people to feel a little, the risk is really on the label part as far as like they've fronted all that money. They need to make that money back, So it's in everybody's best interest for albums to recoup, but just don't feel super like stressed and, like don't look at the number sometimes, because it's just number, and it's okay. And if you were to leave that label because the relationship doesn't work out with you guys, the debt doesn't follow you. You know what I mean? Like you can like walk away from that label and be like, I owe them $100,000 and I'm never going to pay that back, and they just have to eat it, like that's the gamble of the labels is like, we're going to gamble on the stars. We think they're going to be huge and it might work out. A lot of times it doesn't work out, and that's okay. And they took that risk, and that's on them, and they know that. So just so you know, when you see people saying like, I owe the label this much money, you don't actually owe them. It's a scam.
There's a question back here.
Hi. Is there any point in having a proper website for your label, or can you just do it from Bandcamp or something like that?
You should have not only your own website, but you should start a newsletter. We should not be platform dependent. These platforms get sold. Andrew Jarvis, the founder of Bandcamp, thought I was cool and like hooked me up with like a special label account when Bandcamp first started, and it was like really awesome. Bandcamp got sold, right? And now it's like it's great, but like we should not be platform dependent on anything. If you have your own website, which now you can do with AI in like 2 seconds, if you have your own newsletter, you collect your own newsletter list, get to 1,000 subscribers, sell all of those people $10, and you don't need anything anymore. Like you don't need any of that other stuff anymore, and you won't be okay. Look, in 10 or 20 years ago, media companies, all of the major media companies, they were owned by 90 different entities. Okay, the media companies now are owned by 5 different companies right now. It's a huge problem. It's a huge, huge problem. We have to do our own thing just to keep ourselves safe. And also, like, you have the ability to be more creative with it. It's an opportunity to do so. It's so, so easy and cheap to do so. It's also tax deductible. So, once you start making that money, get that deduction. But you should definitely do it 100%.
Also, another benefit of owning all of your own relationships with your audience is that you can get more fine data. Like, when one artist who's on your label, or yourself, if you are release music on your own label, if you're coming to that city and you say, 30 of the people on my mailing list live in Denver and I'm going to be in Denver next week, you can, send out a targeted thing and, form a stronger relationship with that segment of your audience. So I 1,000% agree with what you said.
And actually, for data, a lot of these newsletter services, you can actually do A/B testing. So that means like sending out 2 different versions of a newsletter to see how things perform. So do people want to read 2 paragraphs of you going like, I don't know, pining about Detroit techno and then having like a track? Maybe not. Maybe people just want like, like a link to like a free desktop thing and then like a link to this and that. And you can literally see what people want. So that's a really, really good point. But you should go for it 100%.
Yeah, I also think it's good to just own your name. Own your name on the internet, like your band name or your personal name, whatever it is, it's you.com, right? And then you have this like informational hub. So if you don't really like websites and you don't really want to like do it all yourself, people can still go there and absolutely everything you do is in one space, and they can click out to whatever their preferences. If they like to follow you on Bandcamp, your Bandcamp link is there, your Instagram, your Twitter, your TikTok, whatever it is, all your tour dates are in one place, or there's a link out to where all your tour dates are, like, but it's just efficient, and it's helpful for like people who are like learning about you or want to get more information on you, and they can just go to one spot and everything's there.
Also, I'm putting on my like band manager hat right now. One thing, and this is kind of annoying like marketing language, but like if you think about like your audience in like a funnel terms, where like you want like to form a stronger relationship with these people who express interest in the music you put out, either as yourself or on your label or whatever. You want them to be buying an album, buying merch, supporting you, and so you can keep doing it, right? So like these other platforms, whether it's social media or Spotify or whatever, you think of them as like the top of the funnel that you want to guide people to like forming a stronger connection with you, right? And so like I always had my artists like trying to point them towards somewhere where you can connect with them directly, and you can, when you have a new release coming out, like they are the people that know first, and they whatever, they get a discount code that, for the LP, they get whatever, a guest list spot if you're coming to their town, whatever. These other platforms, just think of them as like the upper funnel, and you want to guide them to a stronger relationship down funnel.
One other thing that I would add. So, okay, so like when I was a kid, I was like obsessed with Steve Jobs, which I understand is problematic also in its own way because he wasn't a perfect person, but I literally saw the iPod change the world and I just thought it was the coolest thing. Um, in an interview that I saw with Steve Jobs, he is talking about Microsoft and he is talking about how the issue with Bill Gates is that he doesn't have any taste. And that's the problem. And it just like rocked my world about that, about how they were kind of trying to do the same thing, but that this guy was trying to infuse beauty into every single touch point. And so when you buy an iPhone, right, that little like suction that comes out of the box where you're like trying to pull it out of the box, that's like design because he wants it to be like this thing that you like work for. And so like every little touch point when you step into an Apple store is all designed to create this like idea of like what it feels and to be into that ecosystem again. I know there's all sorts of problematic stuff with that, but because of that interview, um, this is so every time someone buys a record from me, I write a haiku and I put it in there and I wrap it in tissue paper and I like make it so that like as soon as they open it, that they're getting this experience that they can't get anywhere else. And sometimes people will meet me and be like, hey, I ordered a record from you, and like not even talk about the music and be like, I love the haiku. And it's just like, it's just like a way to, again, change their experience that introduces the music and leaves a lasting impact. Instead of looking at the website as like a chore or something, like have fun with it. Be creative, like put in little Easter eggs of like stuff that you want people to think about, make it your own. I think that the fact that like most of us just visit 3 websites is sad. There's a lot of dead internet. You're just doing IG, doing Facebook Marketplace and whatever. Like that's sad. That sucks. There's such a big opportunity here. It's a canvas, we can have fun with it. And we are the ones that should. We're the ones that are creative. We're the ones that have the taste, that can understand beauty, that want to do these things. We should be the ones that are creating beautiful things in that touch point as well, in my opinion.
The other thing that I think is a really powerful thing that you can do with your own website or just your own space on the internet, wherever it may be, is like to allow fans to talk to each other. That's not in a Instagram comment thread or just something like that. Like being able to own a space where you can bring people together, not only you talking to them directly, but allowing them to talk to each other directly also creates something special and lasting, and that can really strengthen a fan base and an audience.
And we have artists that have their own. We have artists that use their website for that, for message boards. They put all the tablature to their songs up there so you can learn how to play their songs. They put like book club stuff on there if they're really into that, so it is really, it's like yours to play with however you want. And every album campaign will go back to their website and add some new pop-up thing to it just for that album, or will reskin it in the artwork of that album and just keep people coming back, like what's going on over here right now, they keep visiting you.
More questions? Yes.
To keep going on the contract topic, I think this question started as like maybe a word of advice to artists to just like see the contract early and negotiate the contract early. But I guess maybe you can both speak on like at what point in the process you do that, because I've had experiences where like the label gets the music mastered before sending me the contract, and then it's a little bit like, well, what are you going to do now if you don't like the contract? We're already like getting somewhere.
That's a no for me. We don't do anything until you sign the paper. So we don't take your music. We don't. I mean, sometimes we'll start working on stuff with you if there's like a verbal agreement where it's like, well, this is a negotiation, but while we're negotiating this, can you help me like work on this or work on this? That's fine. We will, in good faith, just like start working with you until it's done. But we would never like take your audio or do stuff to it until that point.
Yes, that's the same for me. It's my money, so not wasting it like that. God.
More questions? Yes. Okay, now I vamp as I walk across the room and avoid chairs and cameras. Okay.
Hey y'all, thanks for sharing today. My question is about distro. Say I am self-releasing a record on a vanity label. I'm putting something out, some sort of small scale thing. How do I start the dialogue with a Rub-a-Dub, a Juno, or whatever, just to get like some sort of distribution other than myself, my direct followers, and like whatever record stores I know. If I'm like trying to like, how can I get this literally distributed?
That's the label's job. I would be surprised if they would be okay with you negotiating with the distributor on their behalf. It's a huge part of why you would work with the label is that they are supposed to do that work, like Melanie mentioned, so that you can focus on your stuff.
But say it's like my vanity label.
Want to do it independently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be honest. I got really really lucky. The way that I did it, and that's I guess the only thing that I can speak on. I was selling weed to a friend, actually, and he was working for which I don't do anymore. So there's no money in that either. Uh, He was working for the guy that runs People's Potential Unlimited. PPU is a cult following label in DC. This guy puts a bunch of reissues, really good taste. And my buddy was like, when I started the label, my buddy was like, "Oh man, like you gotta show Andrew Morgan, you gotta show this guy." And they were coming over to my house, and I was like just praying that he would want 20. Because I had just ordered 500 and I just didn't know what I was going to do with them. It was a new artist, it was a new genre. I was new. I was insistent that we do art that looks nothing like anybody else. I was insistent that we have a sound and an approach that looks nothing like anybody else. That's really hard to sell sometimes if there's not like proof of a model. So I was just like hoping so much that Andrew would sit down and get 20. So he came in and they sat down. I gave him some tea and I'm like, I was like 24, like super nervous. And he sits down and he listens to the music and he said, "I'll take 350." And that changed my life because people pay attention to him. He's a tastemaker. He's not a distributor, but he saw something in me and wanted to help. There weren't a lot of other DC labels, and I think that he wanted to kind of contribute and encourage younger people to do it. And Honest John saw, and they poached me and as an actual distributor, and had a couple of releases with them. I believe the fit for me is a lot better with Rub-a-Dub. I don't know, something about people in the north of the UK are a little bit more like, I'm kind of a dirtbag, I kind of need to work with other dirtbags a little bit, like Honest Ones are very like a little posh and I don't know, it does like kind of a different thing. But I got really lucky in the sense that like he believed in what I was doing. But I think that luck was helped by my absolute dedication and conviction that like I was going to do things my way. I was going to find people that were doing stuff that were just going to like blow people's minds. I mean, when I first heard that music, my reaction wasn't like, man, I need to start a label. My reaction was like, I can't be the only one that hears this. It's not fair. I have to get this out to as many people as possible. So I like took all my savings and I did it. And so lucky in the sense that I got in that room, but like I do think that the reason why he took that chance was because he saw how crazy I was about it. You gotta kind of just like vouch. I know that's not solid advice. It's just how it worked out for me.
That is a great point, though, that, a lot of people in the music industry at independent record labels, I can't speak for major labels. I've never worked at one, but they're all just music nerds. They're music lovers. And they also, want to be successful at these things and have this business. But it always starts there. Like, it's always like everyone there is like kind of a music freak. And so, I know there's a lot of vilifying labels, and labels are like bad, greedy, shady people. And those people do exist, absolutely. But just know that it does start from a good place. Like, it's an insane thing to start a record label. Like, it is not a good idea. It's not a good business model. It's not a way to get rich quick. Like, so for most of the time, the people that are approaching you, at least from our world, are genuine people, and then there's a sensible like business side of it. Absolutely. But like, just know that like they do start out on your side, for the distro thing. It is really hard to get distribution as an independent artist, super hard. So when she was saying, try to sell your stuff to stores who take consignments. Absolutely. Ask those stores who they order product from for really small releases, because there are a few really niche physical distributors out there. It's been years since I personally had to do it, but I ordered from crazy weird places all the time when I ran a record store. So there's like places in San Francisco and Massachusetts and like weird, tiny, tiny distributors who do handle like punk 7 inches and electronic music and things like that. Ask your record stores where they're ordering stuff from. Ask friends, if you have friends that have already started distributing stuff, ask them who they like and who they're working with. Google, your artists that you follow and see who is distributing their stuff. A lot of that stuff is in the metadata when you look at things. I know like Digitally DistroKid works with a lot of independent artists. I don't know if people love them or not, but yeah, there's a few options out there, but it is difficult, I know.
I would also add to that I've worked on a bunch of artist projects where I really have regretted pressing physical copies before I saw any sort of momentum or just seeing where had a clearer sense of where they were at with their career and with their audience. And so if I don't know, I'm not familiar with like where you are in your release history or your audience or whatever, but like if you're starting from scratch, like I would probably think about like maybe putting some music out, working it in whatever way you want to work it, and then seeing where the excitement is, and then maybe pressing things once you see that there's 50 people here who might be interested in buying something. Maybe I'll press 100 and see where it goes, but I've lost a lot of money pressing things too early.
That is a great advice. Yes. Like, put your stuff up digitally, sell merch, and then don't make records or, whatever physical media you like until you feel like you have someone to sell it to. And then there are a lot of really great, like super tiny pressing plants popping up around the country. And I've met there's one here. Yeah. So those are wonderful because those didn't exist before, hardly at all. And you'd have to go to these major pressing plants and you'd have to do a minimum quantity and everything. And now you can do like 57 inches, 112 inches, like whatever, sell them at your shows, sell them to record stores, and then build from there. So that's a really good point.
Thanks so much, y'all.
So this actually ties into the website question. So something that I have on our website is I list the stockist. So when I talk to a store, I have something to offer them. I can say, I can also put your store on. So I say, oh, you're in Richmond. I have like a section on my website that lists every store in Virginia. On that page, I also encourage people to support their local record store. It saves on shipping. It's better for the environment. It's really hardworking, a record store. I love what Melanie just said about like you shouldn't be doing this. A lot of the time, it's not necessarily good advice. Like there are so many cheaper and easier ways to be vain. It's just not. It's so detail oriented. It's so tedious, and a lot of it's really thankless work. But if you keep on doing it, these distributors also have A&R. They also have people, they are looking for people who are like just continually doing it over and over and over again, because that proves to them that they could sell it. They're like, oh, if, Carrie can do this where they're living like right here, then I'm definitely going to be able to sell this over here. So like prove it to yourself, and then they will find you. Just, I'm telling you, like just try to find 1,000 people to sell $10 to. Just like keep it simple, and then it'll come. It really will.
The local Pittsburgh press is hellbender. Shout out to Davis for letting us know about that, by the way. Also, if there are more questions, but I have a question that you kind of touched on, Melanie, by saying it's crazy to start a record label. If people are crazy, what are like the first 5 steps to like start your own record label if you wanted to?
Well, I did not start my own record label. I have always worked for other people's record labels, so I think maybe you want to start this one and then I can pile on.
Okay, the first 5 steps is throw away the steps. Just forget the to-do list. The things that are most important, you will just find and do. There's so many different things that go into it, and there's also so many different ways to do it that, again, you have to just like look inward and not take my advice on how I did it, because you have to do it your own way. I will say that there's a couple of things that I think need to happen for me. I don't put out music that I don't think is just the best. Don't contribute to the noise. There is so much bad stuff out there. 80% of it is terrible. There's no point in doing it. If it feels derivative, and if it feels like somebody's already said it, there's other ways to support. There's other ways to be crazy. There's other ways to do stuff. But if you find something that's like what I was just mentioning, like other people need to hear this, there has to be something that I can do. I have to do everything in my power so that someone in, Brazil can like download it and they email you and they're like, this totally made my day. Like if it's possible to do that. Obviously there's visuals, getting an understanding of like licensing and like how to do it. It's $50 to copyright something. It's copyright.gov, which is just basically like the government. It's just like a big archive. It's $50 to do that. A lot of people sometimes kind of assume BMI or ASCAP will like do it for you. If we were talking about legalities, like it would be good to just like go and register the copyright. These are all like little things that you can learn how to do, though. None of those like logistical steps are as important as like you just believing so much that this art can really, really help people or change the way that people perceive the world or themselves, and can make things a better place, contribute to the conversation. That after that, you can figure everything else out. All the other steps are going to come. But that's just, I think, for me, it makes all of the craziness easier because I have this North Star. I'm like, I'm just going to do whatever it takes, even though it just sucks so much. It just sucks. A lot of the time it just sucks. But because of how good the work is, it makes things a little bit like doable and feasible. Like you have to have something that you just believe in. That again goes beyond your own ego, because your own ego is just not enough, because you doubt yourself. You feel like an imposter some days. But if you like believe in the work, like the work is never an imposter, right? Like it's just that, and it's just like amazing, and it's just great. And once you believe in that, like all of the other stuff, it's like whatever. Just throw away the list, forget it.
Yeah, the origin story of Rough Trade is it started as a record store. And the record store started because he was just an avid record collector, to the degree where he had way too many records than he could possibly listen to. So he's like, I should sell some of these. And he would go to different cities and buy multiple copies of things so he could share them with his friends. So he's like, I'll just open a shop and then I have a place to store all my records and I can sell some of them if I can. Then people start coming into the shop, all these musicians, friends that are musicians, they all want to put their music out. They don't know how. They're not on labels, and he loves their music. So he's like, I'll just put it out for you. Like if no one's going to do it, I'll do it. It's that good. So he just started out with 7 inches at first. Like start small, start at, what you can handle. And so there was no digital at the time, but he was just making small limited runs of 7 inches. Then eventually, people had enough to make an album. he there is a crazy story of like a guy came into the record store, gave him a demo tape and was like, "Can you help me put this record out? I have this new band and they're really good and you should do it." And they were called the Smiths. So he was the first person to put out a Smiths record. Nobody else was into it. Nobody had heard of it. It was weird music at the time. Everyone was way more punky or way more poppy than them. Like things like that happened to him all the time where he was just open and willing and excited to do stuff. And so then he got to a point where he was like, I've been putting out all this music and I don't even know what I'm doing. And then I talked to these people who work at like big fancy record labels. They kind of don't know what they're doing either, so it gave him more confidence where he was like, you know what? I think a bunch of us should get together and pool our information and, share knowledge and help each other like get there. So, that record label started at the same time as a lot of other labels like Beggar's Banquet was around the same time. Mute Records was around the same time. They were in this community of indie people starting record labels. I would say like, if you want to start your label and you're not sure what to do, like definitely like ask a lot of questions, reach out to people who run labels. And a lot more people are willing to share information than you think. Like I know there's some gatekeepers out there, but like that's my thing too, is like I'm more than happy to give you my opinion and advice. You don't have to take it. You can think it's dumb or whatever, but like I'm happy to tell people what I know. And if that helps them with what they're doing, I think a lot of other small labels are like that as well. Like they all want to help each other out. But yeah, you have to be crazy. You have to be willing to work all the time on something. You have to love it because otherwise you'll just cry. Like it is like a labor of love and passion, I think, definitely for that business in particular.
Yeah, and one thing to add to that, like I touched upon this last week, but I know there are some new people here this week. Like sometimes when we're talking about this stuff, it can kind of seem like the music business can kind of seem disconnected from like a local scene in a way, but like everything starts at this level, like this guy who was just like kind of doing stuff for his friends or whatever, and then like signs this nobody band called the Smiths. Like that's just like, I went to high school here, in 2000, I guess 3 or 2, whatever. They're the mid 2000s. And like, and like, the people who I used to buy weed from this guy named Wiz Khalifa. And I like grew up with Malcolm McCormick, who started rapping as Mac Miller. Like stuff just kind of happens. And like, you kind of don't, it's not disconnected. Like everything starts at this level with, these other people in a room who are just kind of interested in doing the same thing you're interested in doing. And then like someone will kind of like support someone else and someone will start popping off on the internet and it just happens,
Questions? More questions? There we go. I'll also say from a finance point of view, there are other options out there too besides labels. There's like Beatbread or other ways of getting like individual and independent projects. So look those up too.
I guess we didn't really touch on like labels versus licensing. Was that a thing you wanted to do? Yeah.
So I do music production and my stuff is really reliant on samples. I've never ever thought of going to a record label and like selling it in that way. This is kind of a vague question, but what does that look like from your perspective? Is that a no-no?
Okay, so are you making your samples or you're using
I'm
samples?
using samples and chopping them up and adding drums over it, like hip type stuff.
In the 70s, there was this visual artist who was taking ads, Marlboro ads, repurposing them. There's this big court case. Now I can't remember the artist's name, but basically that court case, now it allows visual artists to take art and redo it a little bit, sample it, if you will. And if you even change the colors or if you just like add a collage or something, if you change it, then it's yours. We have not had that same litigation in music. It is a real shame because dance music oftentimes is really sample driven. And when I talked about like copyright, there are so many labels that do not do it. There are so many labels that do not actually do the legality stuff because it is sample based. If you want your label or your music to be put out on a major label, it is very likely if the sample is not clear that they're not going to legally be able to put it out. You can do things like micro samples, but like I hate asking people not to do it. I don't want to get sued now. I now have too much to lose. I've seen other people get sued. And so it's stuff that I avoid, but it does break my heart because I think that it's not like just the litigation just hasn't happened in the same way that visual art has. And it's the same thing. Like you can collage something and it's like yours, but if you collage music, like even if you have like the same like structure, the same like chord progression, you can get sued if it's like a big enough artist. Yeah, but right. And and then like after you die, like your family might also like the Prince estate or the Michael Jackson estate or the Marvin Gaye estate will also continue to come for you. And so like if you want to just put out stuff that like have stuff for yourself and your friends to DJ with. If you don't license it, you sell like a pretty low key thing on Bandcamp. I say do it. I think it's awesome, but it's very, very unlikely for a major label to take on that liability because it is just asking for a lawsuit. It's also really tricky. Sometimes even the record like pressing plans, people that make the cassettes or the CDs, they won't even create it because it's a liability on them as well. This is all to say, though, I don't think that you should stop. I think that this is an issue with the structure of sampling, and there are some of my favorite songs have samples in them. Some of my most favorite songs. There is micro sampling that is legal though, so it's like the sample that's like really, 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 really tiny. Um, but you should talk to a lawyer about that. Not me. I'm not a lawyer, but there's like ways. But it's just. No label is going to take on that liability as far as I know.
A lot of that stuff just lives online, self-released, which is, great and fine. But yeah, I'm sure you've seen like examples of albums that never made it to streaming or got taken down from streaming. That's usually clearance issues, like those at Paul's Boutique could never be made today. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. But that said, we do have someone who clears samples, and if they can get it cleared, they will for, if it's affordable and reasonable and they say yes, like we will try to get your samples cleared if we can. If it's super expensive, sometimes we'll go back and say, do you want to maybe tweak this one, and make it just different enough that you won't get sued? That happens all the time. So I guess it's just like, yeah, how much you're willing to like compromise sometimes.
Cleared means licensed, just so everyone's at the.
And like another thing that you could do when Melanie was just mentioning about tweaking, like sometimes like you can use a sample as like a guideline about like certain chord voicings or certain rhythms that you like. So like work around it, produce the song around it, and then just take the sample out and see what you have. That can be kind of an interesting way to use them. I also Logic just revamped their stem splitter. It is so awesome, and I know I use it illegally all the time, but I just love it. And now I have like a whole file of acapellas that I just play because of that. So I really believe that it is useful. It is a valuable art form. The legalities of it is not something that I agree with. And until that litigation catches up to the visual world, this is just what it is. So when you are self-releasing, don't license it. Can't sell it out to a commercial or something like that. Like it's just not worth it. And actually, by the way, like if you are putting your music out, you should just get an LLC. Also, you should just take the liability off of you too. That's also something that you can look up YouTube and how to do. But yeah, liability is definitely an issue. So I would say you can't submit it, but you should not stop.
So one of my artists, she made a lot of edits that ended up becoming very popular. And, and knowing that she couldn't put them out on streaming and, certainly couldn't license it to film and TV, whatever, she instead used them as a way to build her email list, her mailing list. So she said, okay, here's a pack of these 10 edits I've made this year. You can download it, you download the WAV files as a zip file, but I need your email address in the city you live in. And now she has 5,000 people just from that little part of her email list building. So, and then she can later sell merch and, concert tickets and whatever.
I know a guy, I'm not gonna name him, but Baltimore Club legend, okay? He's one of the guys that like literally pioneered Baltimore Club. Someone I really, really look up to. He's played my festival a few times and just like someone that I just revere. He will sell like USBs full of like Aaliyah sound samples that I know this dude has not gotten cleared for like $50. But it's just like, his way of just like doing it is they sell like, you can get around it. It's like super illegal though. But it is it's part of dance music. It does happen, and so, I'm not gonna advise you to do it. I'm just saying that there are people that do it.
Do we have any other questions? Oh,
Oh, the
oh yeah. Someone had asked us before about like retaining ownership of your music when when in dialogue with a label about potentially signing. Are there options for an artist to retain their ownership, or does the ownership always go to the label? How does that work?
The structure for me is I have rights to the masters. So I have licensing rights to the master. The composition is always going to be the artist. So the way that you report those is it's 100%. So it's totals 200%, which is stupid because that's not how percentages work. But like you can really get like super granular about it. Like you can like give like 5% to this person and 10% to this person, and some genres that Beyonce will have like 20 writers on a song or something like that. Like there are some genres where that thing kind of matters. But the way that I do it is just 50-50. It's not. All labels kind of do it differently, and it is genre dependent, and from what I can see.
I think it's artist level dependent too. The more success you have or the more well known you are, the more leverage you have to make a deal where you own everything and you license it out to someone. We have certain artists who start with a 50-50 deal that eventually are like, we really want to own everything and keep everything and just license it out to the label to distribute and sell. And what usually happens with that on the other hand of that is you own it all. You also pay for it all. So you're fronting the money now instead of the label because they're not putting the money in on that end. So it's just where you want your expenses to come from and how much you want to give to another person, how much you want to keep for yourself. But those deals all do still exist. Like you could be your own label. And this happens a lot with, I think like, who is it? Like Phoebe Bridgers does this now, right? Where she started out on Secretly, got really successful and was like, now I'm my own label and you license my music and you distribute it and put it out. And I'm also going to put out other artists on my label and you have to distribute them too. And they do it, because she's a great business partner for them. But yeah, she worked up to that, so I think like all of those things are possible in different configurations.
We also had another question earlier about red flags that you see for, in the situation of an artist potentially signing to a label or maybe have just signed a label deal and stuff went wrong. Like, what are some red flags you both have seen?
I would say anything where they don't suggest or recommend a lawyer to you, that they want to deal directly with you and no one else. I think that's super unprofessional. I think them trying to get anything from you ahead of time before you've made a deal, trying to get your music from you, trying to get you to put out something before you've signed anything. Don't do that. Anytime they want you to spend your own money on something that normally a label would front the money for, be hesitant, really look at, the situation. And the main one for me is like, how many artists is this person signing like every year? Like our thing is like, we never sign or we never put out more than, I think it's like four or five albums a year, because there's no way you can spend enough time and energy on that release if you're putting out a billion other things. And I feel like some labels go through these phases, or some labels just function this way where they're just like, just sign it all and one of them will do well and everyone else will fall to the side, and it's kind of like, I don't know what a good metaphor is for that, but like, it's like shoot, like it's just like a weird way to do business. I think you don't want to be one of many. You want to be kind of one of few, and especially in your genre or in your type of music, how many of artists similar to your genre do they have? Is it because they're a curated boutique, like they are an electronic label, they put out electronic music, or do they put out all kinds of music but they have like 10 electronic artists but none of them are really doing well? You know what I mean? Like they're just kind of collecting things until one of them hits. So I think like the quantity of like what a label has, and if there's anything on there that you actually see notably doing well, I think is good to look out for.
That advice is also great for agencies. There is some of these bigger DJ agencies that are just like, are trying to throw spaghetti on the wall and it's super impersonal. So that's a great red flag. Personally, because I produce also, I was approached by a label in Berlin who I agreed to do a record with because Peach was on it, and I've always had a lot of respect for her. She's always been so sweet to me, and I was like, okay, that's a name that I recognize. This must be a cool thing. After working with the label a little bit pre-contract, they wanted to market me before they had even heard my finished songs. They wanted my press shots. They wanted my videos and stuff. I was like, this is sort of not aligned with who I am and what I do. I need you to be like into the music that I make, not into like how whatever, something's coming off on camera or like the marketing part, the press release. That was really unusual to me. It's not, again, like maybe I'm not saying that the way that I do it is the only way, but because it wasn't aligned with who I already knew that I was, it's a lot easier to make that decision. So this goes back to kind of how I started this. Like the more that you know about who you are and your convictions and what you want to say, the easier it's going to be like, oh, this is a red flag because it just doesn't align. It's just easier to make those decisions.
Another thing that I think is really yucky that I just will mention as far as red flags is when people come in and right away try to change things about you. I don't like that. There's a lot to be said for helping someone figure out how they want to present themselves, what their imagery is, what their creative like artwork situation looks like, all those kinds of things. That's fine. I think, a lot of people at labels have good experience in working with a lot of people and being like, this kind of thing. But it's really like they should be getting to know you and then figuring out ways to enhance what you're already doing, right? But I don't like I've had experiences where I've heard of artists being like, yeah, they said I should like wear more makeup now and, or like lose weight or things like that. And I just like think that's super gross. And I've seen it happen to people where they get signed and been assigned a personal trainer or something and they like look cooler and sexier and everything. And then the person at that label gets fired and then nothing happens to their record and the whole thing is for nothing. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think that kind of stuff kind of comes later where like you establish yourself and your music and who you are. And if your image is really important to you, absolutely like do that. If that's not your main focus, someone shouldn't be trying to make that your focus. I think that's.
If you're able to also meet another artist on that label and just hear what their experience is, that's also a really great way just to be like, just hear it from someone who's already experiencing it, because there's so many different ways to do it.
And there's no one on that label that you like musically.
Yeah.
If you're like, I don't like anyone on this roster, like that label is not for you, probably. Even if it's totally different music, you should at least like it and respect it and be like, I fit in this world,
Anything final? Yes. Okay. Coming up the middle.
Thank you. Just quick question about the length of contracts for. I've seen a lot of artists that release stuff on like bigger labels in the 90s, and I've noticed that they put out their own stuff, these sort of masters now on Bandcamp. So I'm kind of wondering if the standard, like, I mean, obviously, I guess that would depend on the way the contract goes, but for folks releasing stuff, is it a good idea to have like a specific limit on the amount of time for the contract, versus, I guess, like basically that it would allow them eventually to have control back of their masters?
I personally have it different ways depending on the preference and to be frank, the laziness level of the artist. Sometimes they do want me to do things forever. Other artists are like, you can have this for 10 years, so it depends. But I, again, it's really important to me that the artist knows that I have their back with absolute conviction and that I'm going to fight for them through my life. And a lot of my friends are lazy, so it'll be okay.
Yeah, I think it just depends. Like, I do think, in all honesty, a lot of record labels would like to own things forever. It makes things easier for them. They have, labels want to build up a catalog. They want to have a bunch of releases that they're proud of, that they can sell year after year after year forever. It's part of what helps them make money and helps them sign new artists and put out new music is catalog. So it's not like it comes from a bad place of we want to own everything forever. But those terms are very negotiable. Every 10 years, you can re-up, every 5 years, whatever that is that you negotiate, they're happy to go back to you and re-up and offer to keep doing it. And you'll notice a lot of people who have stayed with the same label or have left all their catalog with the same label, it's usually because that label is taking good care of their stuff. If they're not promoting your albums or doing anniversary editions or doing anything cool with it, then they kind of want to take it back and be like, I can do this better myself, or give it to someone else who will take care of it for me. Because managing your own catalog does also become a chore sometimes. So you do like leaving it with someone, but there are limits you can put on it. Absolutely. And then I think there's a new law even where after 30 years, between 25 and 35 years, I should know this, labels have to give you the option to buy it back or to release it. It's not, I think they found a ruling or something that says you can't just own something forever. And about 35 years is usually about the life of a career, So if you get to this point where, you would like to buy all that stuff back, or you have passed and your family would like to do something else with your music, there is an option. You'll see that happening a lot more now as older albums from a long time ago being re-released through a different label or through the family estate or something like that. So I think that's kind of changing too.
But one thing I'll add to that, though, I'm assuming that you're talking about mostly dance music. In my experience, managing electronic musicians, a lot of the label deals that we've done for, if it's a single or maybe an album, whatever, if there's no advance, which is a big part of it, there's no advance, a kind of standard thing that I've seen in the last few years is a 10-year license. I kind of use that as a benchmark for if it's a 50-50 profit split with the label. So if there's no money, I mean, there will be vinyl pressing costs or whatever, but once those initial costs are recouped, the label gets 50%, the artist gets 50%, and then after 10 years, the rights revert back to the artist. Again, everything's up for negotiation. Everything is dependent on so many things, what the artist wants to do, what the label wants to do, whatever. But just to put one note, because for electronic musicians, that's a lot of what I've seen recently.
And I think we have maybe one final question over here.
Yeah, this is actually like a final thought, very much along the lines of what you just said, but having released on a lot of like pretty small independent dance music labels that might be pressing like 300 records, 500 records max, like um the just know that the licensing rather than outright ownership for the label is like very much on the table in those situations, I find. And I think it makes sense because some of those labels, most of them are like, they're frequently like passion projects by people who have like other full-time jobs, and they may only release like 1 or 2 records a year, or they might do 3 records a year for a while, and then they might do no records for 2 years, or, and a lot of them don't have the infrastructure where they're really like trying to get things licensed, like pushing for like sync licenses or like doing things that a label would typically do with masters that they own. And some of them also are just like, they're more interested in just like putting out some good music and making their money back. And so, yeah, in those situations, I think like 5 or 10 year license sometimes is like, they might be happy to do that because they know that they're not necessarily going to like take care of that in a certain way. And they're not necessarily trying to build something where they own a huge amount of music. Yeah, just wanted to add that.
What happens if a label folds and they own half your masters? Do they just go to the other artist or whoever owns it?
I feel like that's a tricky one. I have seen catalog get stuck and not be able to go back to artists in certain situations. I think there are other situations where a label will get kind of liquidated and they'll sell off all the whoever wants to buy them.
When you incorporate a business, you generally have to put into the terms about what happens if in the case that you die or something like that, does it go to another partner? And so I would imagine that there's different situations depending on how that business is set up. I should figure that out though, huh?
That's also a reason why it's important to have a proper music attorney working on the contract for that you're going to be signing with the label, because all of that should be addressed.
Yeah, I think anytime it's gotten stuck is for that reason, where it doesn't say that you can buy it back or get it sent back to you.